The sun dipped low in the sky, painting the distant city with a golden light that made the spires of the palace shimmer like they were made of crystal. From the spaceport, a small ship descended, moving slower than usual, as if its passengers were nervous about what awaited them. People gathered around, curious eyes scanning the horizon. Ships from distant worlds occasionally visited, but this one seemed different. There was a sense of anticipation that went beyond normal curiosity. When the ramp finally opened, a figure stepped down. She was a young woman, her hair dark and falling in waves over her shoulders. Her eyes, bright and clear, held a mixture of relief, determination, and a quiet sadness. She moved with the grace of someone who had known hardship but had refused to be broken by it. Beside her walked a child, no older than 10, with messy brown hair and wide, curious eyes. He looked around with wonder, taking in the strange sights and the people who whispered among themselves. He seemed calm, though, as if he trusted the woman completely. The crowd parted slightly, unsure whether to cheer or watch silently. Leela, the lost princess, had returned after so many years. No one had expected her to survive the betrayal that had cost her family their rule. She had vanished without a trace, leaving a kingdom in chaos. Yet here she was, older, stronger, and carrying the proof of a life lived far from home in the form of the small human child. Walking beside her, whispers spread through the crowd. "Is that really her?" one elder asked. "And that child, is he from one of the distant human worlds?" Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy, often underestimated because they were fragile in comparison to other species. Yet there was something about the pair that commanded attention. Lila's presence felt like a storm, quiet but undeniable. A young guard stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Princess Lila," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "welcome home. The council has been informed of your arrival." Lila nodded, her expression softening, but never losing its strength. The child, Ethan, clutched her hand tightly, sensing her tension and drawing comfort from her calm. The journey to the palace was tense. Lila did not speak much, but her eyes took in everything: the people, the city, the changes that had occurred during her absence. She remembered the city as it was, vibrant and full of hope, but now there was a shadow that lingered over it. Buildings were still magnificent, but the streets felt different. There was fear in the eyes of those who watched her pass, and she understood it. She had been gone for too long, and people had learned to survive without her guidance. Once inside the palace walls, Leela was met with more than just the council members. Servants, advisors, and even some citizens had gathered, curious about the stories the humans had brought with them. Leela took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I have returned," she said, her voice steady, carrying both authority and warmth. "And I have brought someone with me who has shown me much about courage, compassion, and the strength of the human heart." Ethan peeked from behind her. Giving a small wave to those who looked at him, the council exchanged cautious glances. Some frowned, unsure whether to trust this outsider. Others were intrigued. Humans had skills and knowledge that could be valuable, but they also brought unknown risks. Lila sensed the tension and knew she would have to prove herself again. Not just as a princess, but as a leader who could unite different worlds. That night, Leela wandered the palace gardens, Ethan trailing behind her. The stars stretched endlessly above them, and the soft hum of the alien city below created a peaceful, almost dreamlike atmosphere. Ethan asked questions about everything: the plants, the lights, the strange birds that flitted through the trees. Leela answered patiently, letting him explore the world she had been away from for so long. Despite the weight on her shoulders, she found herself smiling. There was hope in his curiosity, a reminder that life continued and could still surprise her. "Will they accept us?" Ethan asked quietly, looking up at her with those big eyes full of trust. Lila knelt down to his level, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But we will show them who we are. And when they see what humans can do and what we can achieve together, they will understand." Ethan nodded, gripping her hand a little tighter. Over the next few days, Lila met with the council formally. The sessions were long and filled with questions. They asked about the years she had been missing, about the human child she had brought, and about what she had learned during her travels. Lila spoke with honesty, sharing stories of distant planets, advanced technology, and the resilience of humanity. Some council members listened intently, captivated by the tales, while others remained skeptical, their doubt clear in their furrowed brows. Lila knew she had to be careful. Her words had power, but so did her actions. She invited Ethan to demonstrate what he had learned from the humans he had grown up among. With simple, clever inventions and ideas, Ethan showed the council ways to improve their city, to make daily life easier and safer. His youthful enthusiasm and human ingenuity sparked curiosity even in the most stubborn members of the council. Slowly, the walls of distrust began to crack. Meanwhile, Lila walked the halls of the palace, noticing old portraits and memories of her childhood. The echoes of laughter and voices from the past mingled with the present. She found herself thinking about the family she had lost, the friends who had disappeared, and the life she had once known. There was grief, yes, but also determination. She had survived, and she had returned stronger and wiser. She had brought back not only herself, but a reminder that life could flourish even in the face of fear and uncertainty. As the days passed, Lila and Ethan ventured beyond the palace walls. They walked through marketplaces, observing the people's daily lives. Lila saw the struggle and the resilience, the way humans and aliens alike worked to survive in a world that had grown cautious and weary. She began to see her role not just as a princess, but as a bridge between worlds. The humans she had met had shown her the power of hope, the strength in cooperation, and the value of seeing things from a different perspective at night. When the city was quiet, Lila reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the escape, the small human ship that had saved her, and the bond that had grown between her and Ethan. He was more than just a child. He was a symbol of everything she had learned, a living reminder of the resilience and creativity that humans possessed. She realized that this bond, this connection, could change the future of her world one evening. As the city lights flickered like distant stars, Lila stood on the palace balcony, Ethan leaning against her side. The wind carried the scent of distant oceans and the faint hum of alien engines. She felt the weight of expectation, the curiosity of the people, and the skepticism of the council. Yet beneath it all, there was hope. Hope that the lessons she had learned would take root. Hope that the courage she had nurtured in herself would inspire others. And hope that Ethan's human spirit could help shape a better tomorrow. The return of the lost princess was no longer just a story of survival. It was a story of possibility, of learning from others, and of discovering strength in unexpected places. With Ethan by her side, Lila knew that the challenges ahead could be faced, that barriers could be broken, and that a new chapter for her people was beginning. The first part of her journey home had ended, but the real work, the work of proving herself, of building trust, and of uniting worlds, was only just beginning. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the palace, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Lila sat at the edge of her old room, now cleaned and restored, staring at the objects she once knew so well. Memories flooded back her family's laughter, the lessons she had learned in her youth, and the warmth of a home that had been torn from her. Ethan sat beside her, sketching in a small notebook he had brought from his own world. His focus on drawing, on capturing the life around him, reminded her of how humans could see beauty in the simplest things. She remembered how she had escaped so many years ago, carried off by humans who had found her in the midst of chaos. The betrayal of her own people had left her without allies, without hope, yet the humans had shown kindness and ingenuity that she had never imagined. They had risked everything to save her, and in return, she had promised to protect one of their own. A young boy who had lost his father during that same rescue mission, Ethan looked up from his notebook, his eyes bright and curious. "Tell me again about the ship you came on," he said. "I want to remember every detail." Lila smiled softly, her mind drifting back to that moment. She described the sleek lines of the human ship, its quiet strength, the clever systems that allowed it to survive in dangerous space. Ethan listened intently, asking questions about how the crew worked together, how they solved problems, and how humans could survive in places no one else dared. The council had agreed to meet her again that morning. Lila walked down the wide corridors with Ethan close by, feeling the eyes of servants and guards on her. Some looked impressed, others skeptical, but all were curious. She had to show not only her strength as a princess, but also the value of the human child she had brought back. He was a living example of courage, ingenuity, and adaptability. In the council chamber, the members sat in their usual formation, exchanging quiet glances as she entered. Lila began to speak, recounting her experiences during the years of exile. She spoke of distant planets, of species and cultures she had encountered, and of the human crew who had taught her things she could never have learned at home. Her voice was calm but passionate, her words carrying a sense of authority that was impossible to ignore. Some council members frowned, muttering about the risks of relying on humans. They had long believed humans were fragile, unpredictable, and untrustworthy. Lila understood their fears but did not falter. She introduced Ethan, letting him demonstrate what he had learned. The boy showed designs for energy-efficient systems, clever problem-solving methods, and simple innovations that could improve daily life on their planet. The council watched in silence, slowly realizing that these human ideas were practical, effective, and sometimes brilliant. After the meeting, Lila and Ethan walked through the palace gardens. The air smelled sweet with flowers that had been tended carefully over the years. Ethan skipped ahead, stopping to examine a curious plant. "On my world, plants like this would glow at night," he said, his voice full of wonder. Lila listened, fascinated by the ways humans noticed small details others overlooked. It reminded her of the value of seeing the world differently as the day went on. Lila met with various citizens who had come to see her. She spoke to merchants, artisans, and guards, listening to their concerns, their hopes, and their fears. She learned that life had changed in her absence. Fear and uncertainty had taken root, and trust was difficult to rebuild. Yet, through her words and actions, she began to plant seeds of hope. She shared stories of resilience, of humans facing impossible odds and finding solutions. And slowly, people began to smile, to nod, to believe that the lost princess could lead them once again. One evening, she took Ethan to a small balcony overlooking the city. Lights twinkled below, reflecting off the water and the canals that ran through the streets. The city seemed alive, yet there was tension in the air, a sense of caution that had not existed before. Ethan leaned against her, shivering slightly in the cool breeze. "Do you think they will ever really accept us?" he asked softly. Lila wrapped an arm around him. "It will take time," she said. "People need to see not just who we are, but what we can achieve together. Humans have strength in ways they do not always realize. And I want to show them that strength can help everyone, not just us." Ethan nodded, understanding more than his years should allow. Over the following days, Lila spent time in the laboratories and workshops of the palace, learning from scientists and engineers while teaching them new methods she had discovered from humans. Ethan joined her, eager to share his ideas and inventions. They worked together on small projects, energy-efficient lighting, water filtration systems, and communication devices that could send messages across the planet instantly. The council and citizens watched these efforts with growing interest and cautious admiration. At night, Lila often found herself alone in the quiet halls, reflecting on the years she had spent away. She thought about the humans who had saved her, the lessons she had learned, and the bond she had formed with Ethan. Their connection was more than just survival. It was a partnership built on trust, courage, and curiosity. It gave her hope that the future of her planet could be different, stronger, and more united. One afternoon, a young council member approached her cautiously. "Princess Lila," he said, "I have seen the work you and the human child have done. It is impressive. Perhaps we have judged too quickly. Perhaps humans are not as weak as we thought." Lila smiled gently. "They have qualities that we can learn from," she replied. "Adaptability, empathy, and creativity. These are not weaknesses, they are strengths, and they can help us grow." The council member nodded, seeming to understand, for the first time, the potential of this human influence. As the weeks passed, Lila and Ethan began to explore the city more freely. They visited schools, markets, and even the docks where ships from other worlds arrived. People were curious, asking questions about humans, their technology, and their ways of thinking. Ethan answered with honesty and excitement, sharing stories of his adventures with Lila, while Lila emphasized the lessons learned, the courage shown, and the kindness humans could offer. One day, while walking along a quiet canal, Lila remembered the day she had first been rescued. The chaos, the fear, and the determination of the humans who had risked everything to save her filled her mind. She realized how much she had grown since then. She was no longer just a lost princess. She was a bridge between worlds, carrying knowledge, hope, and the potential for change. That night, as the city slept, Lila stood on the balcony of her chamber, Ethan beside her. The stars stretched endlessly above, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the possibilities it held. She knew that challenges lay ahead, skepticism, resistance, and the work of rebuilding trust, but she also knew that with courage, patience, and the human spirit beside her, they could overcome anything. The lost princess had returned not only to reclaim her place, but to bring something new, something vital to her people. Ethan represented a future where humans and her world could learn from each other, where differences could become strengths, and where hope could flourish even in the darkest times. Lila felt a quiet determination settle in her heart. This was only the beginning, and together they would face whatever the future held. The city felt alive with anticipation. Rumors of the lost princess's return and the human child she had brought spread quickly, reaching even the furthest corners of the capital. People spoke in hushed voices about the changes that had begun to take root, and a mixture of hope and suspicion lingered in the air. Lila moved carefully through the palace halls, aware that every step she took was being watched. Every word she spoke, measured and weighed by those who still questioned her return. Ethan was eager to explore. Yet he stayed close to Lila, sensing the tension that she carried. He noticed the subtle glances from guards, the whispers of servants, and the careful nods of council members who were still uncertain. Despite their curiosity, some were openly skeptical. Humans had been underestimated for centuries, and the council was no exception. Lila knew that she had to bridge this divide, to show not only the courage of humans, but their intelligence, creativity, and empathy. She arranged another meeting with the council, this time focusing on the needs of the city and its citizens. The discussion quickly became heated. Some council members argued that the city had survived without her, that humans could not be trusted with important matters, and that her presence was more symbolic than practical. Lila listened patiently, acknowledging their concerns without losing her authority. When she spoke, she offered evidence, practical solutions, and examples from her years of travel. She reminded them that humans had qualities their own species sometimes overlooked: resilience, quick thinking, and the ability to adapt in ways that could save lives. Ethan, seated quietly beside her, was asked to demonstrate some of the skills he had learned. The boy began to describe simple but effective ways to improve energy distribution, water purification, and communication systems. His ideas were met with initial skepticism, but as he explained the logic behind each one, council members began to nod. Lila watched with quiet pride, seeing the subtle shift in their attitudes. The child had become a bridge, a living example of the potential of humans. After the meeting, Lila took a walk through the city streets with Ethan. The sun was warm on their backs, and the streets were filled with vendors, artisans, and children playing. Despite the beauty in life, there was still a sense of caution, a lingering fear that change could be dangerous. People glanced at them curiously, some with hope, others with doubt. Lila stopped at a small market, greeting the merchants and asking questions about their needs. She listened more than she spoke, knowing that understanding her people's concerns was key to earning their trust. Ethan wandered to a nearby fountain, tossing small pebbles into the water and watching the ripples. Lila observed him, thinking about the lessons humans had taught her over the years. Humans noticed details others ignored. They found joy in small things, and used creativity to overcome obstacles. These qualities were what she hoped to share with her people, to inspire them to see beyond their fears and limitations. As evening approached, Lila returned to the palace. She called a private meeting with several council members who had shown interest in her ideas but remained cautious. She explained her vision for the city, combining the strengths of humans with the traditions of her people. She spoke of cooperation, of learning from each other, and of creating systems that were stronger, safer, and more efficient. Her words were thoughtful, measured, and full of conviction. During this meeting, tensions rose when one council member questioned Ethan's involvement. "He is a child," he said. "How can he contribute meaningfully to matters of governance?" Lila smiled gently, her voice calm but firm. "Ethan may be young, but he has seen worlds, solved problems, and adapted in ways many adults could not. His perspective is valuable because it is different. And in times of crisis, different perspectives can be the difference between failure and success." The council member fell silent, clearly challenged by her reasoning. That night, Lila and Ethan stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The streets were quiet, the glow of lanterns casting soft light on the buildings. Ethan asked her, "Do you think they will ever fully trust us?" Lila considered the question, knowing it would take time. "Trust is built slowly," she said. "They must see not just what we say, but what we do and how we handle challenges together. Patience, courage, and honesty will carry us forward." Ethan nodded, his confidence in her unwavering. In the following days, a crisis emerged. A rogue alien fleet appeared near the planet's orbit, their ships large, powerful, and unknown in their intentions. Panic spread quickly among the citizens, and the council was caught off guard. The defensive systems were outdated, and strategies from the past seemed inadequate for this new threat. Fear and doubt filled the halls of the palace, and the council debated their next move. Lila knew this was the moment to prove the value of the humans she had encountered. And of Ethan. She gathered the council and presented a plan based on tactics. She had learned from humans unconventional strategies, efficient use of resources, and quick adaptability. She included Ethan in the planning, allowing the child to suggest approaches that were unorthodox but clever. The council hesitated at first, unsure whether to trust a child's perspective, but Lila's calm authority and reasoning persuaded them to act. The defense of the city began. Lila and Ethan coordinated with the council, using human-inspired tactics that emphasized speed, surprise, and flexibility. The alien fleet was taken aback by the unexpected strategies. Ships moved in ways the attackers had not anticipated. Defenses were reinforced with clever adaptations, and communication systems were optimized to respond instantly to threats. The people watched in awe as the combined efforts of Lila, Ethan, and the council turned a potentially disastrous situation into a controlled defense. During the conflict, Ethan's quick thinking saved several critical supply lines. He identified weak points in the fleet's formation and suggested targeted responses. Lila implemented his ideas, demonstrating her trust in the child and in the human way of thinking. Slowly, the council and even the skeptical citizens began to understand that humans brought more than strength, they brought ingenuity, creativity, and courage that could protect and uplift. After the fleet withdrew, the city celebrated cautiously, aware that the threat might return. The council gathered to discuss the defense, acknowledging that the human-inspired strategies had been effective. Lila and Ethan were recognized for their contributions, not just as symbols, but as active participants in the survival of their people. A new respect began to form, tentative but real, in the quiet that followed. Lila walked the palace gardens with Ethan. Flowers swayed gently in the evening breeze, and the city below shimmered with lights. They spoke of the events that had just passed, the lessons learned, and the importance of trust, teamwork, and openness to new ideas. Lila realized that the crisis had accelerated the process of acceptance. People were beginning to see that humans could contribute in meaningful ways, and that collaboration across worlds could bring strength and innovation. Ethan looked up at Lila with wide eyes. "Do you think they will remember what humans can do?" he asked. Lila smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. They will, if we continue to show them. Actions speak louder than words. And we have already shown them that courage and creativity can change the outcome of any challenge. Ethan nodded. His confidence in their mission growing, the city slowly returned to normal. Though the sense of excitement and curiosity lingered, citizens spoke of the lost princess and the human child, wondering what new ideas and changes the future might bring. Lila felt a quiet satisfaction. She had survived, returned, and now had the opportunity to guide her people with the lessons learned from humans. The challenge ahead was not only to defend her city, but to reshape minds and hearts, teaching them to see value in differences and strength in unity. At night, Leela stood once more on the palace balcony, Ethan beside her. The stars stretched endlessly above, and she felt the weight of responsibility but also a sense of hope. The events of the past weeks had proven that humans could inspire change, that courage, intelligence, and empathy were qualities that transcended species. Lila knew that the path ahead would be filled with challenges, doubts, and resistance, but she was ready. With Ethan by her side and the lessons of humanity guiding her, she would face whatever came next, determined to build a future where her people could thrive and learn from one another. The weeks following the fleet attack brought both relief and new challenges. The city had survived, but the memory of the danger lingered in the minds of its citizens and the council. Lila spent her days moving between meetings, workshops, and public gatherings, teaching, advising, and showing the people the value of ideas that came from different worlds. She could see a shift slowly taking shape. But it was delicate and needed careful nurturing. Ethan had grown more confident. He no longer clung to Leela as much as before, but he stayed close enough to be part of her plans. He had started talking to citizens on his own, explaining his inventions and showing young children ways to solve problems with creativity. People began to admire his energy and insight, realizing that even a human child could contribute meaningfully. Lila watched him with pride, knowing he represented more than just himself. He symbolized the potential for cooperation, understanding, and growth between humans and her world. One morning, a message arrived from a neighboring planet. They were facing a sudden resource shortage, and their trade routes had been disrupted by the same fleet that had attacked Lila's city. Panic was spreading among their population, and their leaders were unsure how to respond. Lila saw this as an opportunity to put human ingenuity to work once more. She convened the council and laid out a plan to help the neighboring planet. Using lessons she had learned from humans, rapid problem-solving, adaptive thinking, and flexible resource management. Ethan, excited at the chance to contribute, began designing systems that could transport essential goods efficiently, even in the face of obstacles. Lila coordinated the city's resources, assigning teams to assist and making sure everyone worked together smoothly. Some council members still doubted the humans' methods, but the recent fleet attack had shown them the effectiveness of unconventional approaches, and they cautiously agreed to follow her plan. The work was difficult and tiring. Leela and Ethan stayed long hours in the command center, monitoring shipments, adjusting schedules, and solving unexpected problems. Communication between the cities was tricky, and every decision carried weight, as mistakes could lead to shortages or danger. Yet, through it all, Ethan's quick thinking and human creativity proved invaluable. He suggested alternative routes, new ways to use technology, and ways to motivate the workforce that inspired the teams to push forward. During this time, Lila began to notice subtle changes in the city. Citizens were beginning to trust humans more, asking questions, and even requesting help with their own projects. Artisans and engineers approached Ethan for advice, eager to learn from him and apply his ideas. Lila realized that the collaboration was working not just because of results, but because people were starting to believe in the value of difference. They were learning to see strength where they had once seen weakness. The neighboring planet's crisis reached its peak. When a storm of cosmic debris threatened the transport ships, the council was hesitant to proceed, fearing losses, but Lila encouraged them to trust the humans' adaptive strategies. Ethan devised a protective formation that would allow ships to navigate safely through the debris. Using minimal resources, while maximizing efficiency. The plan worked flawlessly. Supplies reached the neighboring planet without damage, and the people there expressed gratitude and amazement at the ingenuity of these human-inspired methods. This success brought attention and respect, not only from the neighboring planet but also from the citizens of Lila's own city. Skeptical council members who had once doubted Ethan now sought his advice. Lila could see the seeds of change taking root. She encouraged collaboration, always emphasizing the importance of learning from each other rather than competing. Humans and aliens began sharing ideas freely, experimenting and improving systems together. It was a small revolution, quiet yet powerful. Evening came, and Lila and Ethan walked through the palace gardens, reflecting on the day. The air was fragrant with flowers, and the sound of distant water created a peaceful atmosphere. Ethan spoke of the excitement he felt at being able to help, at seeing his ideas implemented, and at making a real difference. Lila listened, smiling. She understood the power of human perspective, how even small contributions could inspire hope and change. "Do you think they will continue to trust us?" Ethan asked, his voice soft. Lila looked at him, her eyes calm and thoughtful. "Trust is earned through action," she said. "We have shown them that humans can help, that we can solve problems, and that courage and creativity can make a difference. If we continue, they will see that trust is well placed." Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of pride and responsibility. As days turned into weeks, the city began implementing more human-inspired projects. Water systems were improved, energy became more efficient, and communication networks expanded. Citizens started participating in problem-solving workshops, often led by Ethan. Lila guided these efforts, ensuring that innovation respected the traditions of her people while embracing the strengths humans offered. Slowly, fear gave way to curiosity, skepticism to respect, doubt to collaboration. One afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived from a distant human colony. They came to meet Ethan, having heard of his contributions. Lila welcomed them warmly, and they spent hours exchanging ideas, sharing experiences, and discussing the possibilities of cooperation. The human's presence further strengthened the bond between species, demonstrating that collaboration could extend beyond borders and that mutual learning was not just possible, but essential for survival. In the quiet moments, Lila often reflected on how far they had come. She remembered the day she had first returned to her city, the uncertainty and the suspicion in the eyes of those she had left behind. Now, the atmosphere had changed. People were listening, learning, and applying what humans had taught them. Ethan had grown not only in skill, but in confidence, becoming a symbol of hope, innovation, and the potential for unity. As night fell, Lila and Ethan stood once more on the palace balcony, looking at the city below. Lights glimmered like stars, and the hum of activity reminded them that life was moving forward. They had faced challenges, solved problems, and earned respect through courage and creativity. The city had begun to understand that humans were not merely outsiders but partners, capable of inspiring change and growth. Lila felt a quiet determination settle within her. There would be more challenges, of course, new threats and doubts. But she knew that with Ethan and the lessons learned from humans, they could face anything. The future of the city depended not just on leadership, but on collaboration, empathy, and the willingness to learn from one another. She had brought back more than herself. She had brought back hope, innovation, and the proof that humans could teach even the most advanced worlds new ways to survive and thrive. Ethan turned to her, his eyes bright with excitement. "Do you think other cities will listen too?" he asked. Lila smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "If we continue to show them, yes. They will see that courage, creativity, and collaboration are stronger than fear. We have begun something important here, and it will grow if we nurture it." Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of purpose that went beyond his years. The night grew quiet, but the city was alive with the quiet energy of progress. Lila and Ethan remained on the balcony, reflecting on the journey so far and the possibilities ahead. They had faced fear, doubt, and danger, and had emerged stronger, showing that humans could inspire change, protect lives, and teach lessons that transcended worlds. The lost princess and the human child had not only returned home, they had brought a new way of thinking, a new hope. In a future where cooperation and courage could shape the destiny of their world. The city had changed since Lila's return. Streets that once felt cautious and tense now carried a quiet energy, a sense of possibility that had been missing for years. Citizens moved with more purpose, spoke with more openness, and began to embrace ideas that had once seemed strange or impossible. Lila walked among them, observing, listening, and participating. She could see the results of patience, courage, and the lessons humans had taught her. Ethan was now a familiar face in the city. Children followed him in curiosity, and adults sought his advice on projects and inventions. He moved with a quiet confidence, eager to help and to show that humans, even children, could make a difference. Lila watched him with pride, knowing that he represented not just their friendship, but a bridge between worlds. He embodied hope, creativity, and the power of learning from each other. The council, once skeptical and hesitant, now embraced collaboration. Lila had worked tirelessly to integrate human ideas into the city's governance, showing that innovation did not erase tradition but could enhance it. Citizens were encouraged to participate in planning, contributing ideas, and experimenting with solutions. The city had begun to grow stronger, more resilient, and more united than it had ever been before. One morning, news arrived from a distant neighboring world. They had heard of the changes in Lila's city and wanted guidance in dealing with their own challenges. Lila saw an opportunity to extend the lessons of cooperation and human ingenuity. She gathered Ethan, the council, and advisors, preparing a plan to assist the neighboring planet. The humans' approach of adaptability, empathy, and practical thinking became the foundation for a program that would improve resource management, infrastructure, and communication. Ethan eagerly contributed, suggesting simple yet effective methods to address complex problems. He designed systems that were easy to implement, reliable, and flexible, showing the council and citizens that innovation could come from anyone, regardless of age or origin. Lila coordinated the effort, ensuring that human ideas complemented the traditions and knowledge of her world. Together, they demonstrated that cooperation could transcend differences and lead to real, positive change. As the days passed, Lila reflected on her own journey. She remembered the betrayal that had forced her into exile, the humans who had saved her, and the child she had promised to protect. Every challenge she had faced had strengthened her, teaching her the value of courage, trust, and empathy. She realized that her experiences had prepared her not only to reclaim her city, but to transform it into a place where differences were celebrated and collaboration thrived. Ethan noticed the change in Lila. She moved with a quiet authority, confident in her decisions, and patient with those who doubted. He admired her strength, her ability to lead, and her willingness to listen and learn. Together, they had faced danger, uncertainty, and skepticism, proving that humans could inspire growth and change. Even in worlds far from their own, the city's improvements continued to spread. Water systems became more efficient, energy was conserved, and communication networks expanded. Citizens learned to work together, sharing ideas and supporting each other. The council embraced transparency, and leaders sought advice from both humans and their own people. Lila had created an environment where innovation, empathy, and courage were valued equally, and the city flourished as a result. One evening, Lila and Ethan stood on the palace balcony, looking at the lights below. The city shimmered like a constellation full of life, hope, and possibility. Ethan asked, "Do you think people will remember what we've done here?" Lila smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "They will if we continue to show them that courage, creativity, and collaboration are worth pursuing. We have started something important, and it will grow as long as people are willing to learn from each other." Ethan nodded. Understanding the weight and promise of her words, word of their success reached other cities and planets. Delegations arrived to learn, observe, and implement similar programs. Lila and Ethan shared their experiences, showing that humans could offer insights and ideas that enhanced life for everyone. The human child, once seen as fragile and inexperienced, had become a symbol of unity, curiosity, and the potential for growth when differences were embraced. Despite the accolades and recognition, Lila remained grounded. She knew the journey was far from over. Challenges would arise, new threats would appear, and resistance to change would persist. But she had faith in the people she led and in the lessons humans had taught her. Courage, adaptability, and empathy were tools that could shape a stronger, more inclusive future. As winter approached, the city held a festival to celebrate progress and unity. Lila and Ethan walked among the citizens, sharing laughter, stories, and ideas. Children played games inspired by human creativity, and artisans displayed works that blended traditional and human-influenced designs. The air was filled with music, light, and a sense of possibility. It was a celebration not just of survival, but of growth, collaboration, and the power of learning from others. During the festival, a council member approached Lila quietly. "Princess," he said, "I have seen how humans can contribute, and I understand now that our skepticism was misplaced. We have learned much from you and from the child you brought. Thank you for showing us a different way forward." Lila nodded, her expression calm but proud. "The lesson is not just about humans," she said. "It is about openness, cooperation, and valuing every perspective. That is how we grow stronger together." As the celebration continued into the night, Lila and Ethan found a quiet corner to reflect. They spoke of the challenges they had faced, the lessons learned, and the friendships forged. Ethan realized how far they had come from a lost princess returning home to leaders who inspired trust, innovation, and hope. Lila recognized that the bond they shared was more than friendship. It was a partnership built on trust, courage, and shared vision. The festival ended with fireworks that lit the sky in brilliant colors, reflecting in the waters of the canals below. Citizens cheered, clapped, and celebrated not only the present, but the promise of the future. Lila and Ethan watched in silence, feeling a sense of accomplishment and quiet joy. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and had emerged stronger, leaving behind a city that could now embrace change and growth in the weeks that followed. Lila continued to work with the council and citizens to expand initiatives, ensuring that the lessons learned would continue to influence the city. Education programs were established, blending human ingenuity with traditional knowledge. Communities collaborated on projects, sharing skills and resources. The city was no longer just surviving, thriving, evolving into a place where innovation, courage, and empathy shaped the future. One night, Lila stood once more on the balcony, Ethan beside her. The stars stretched endlessly above, and she felt the weight of her journey, the loss, the exile, the return, and the transformation she had helped bring about. She knew that challenges would always exist, but she also knew that with courage, collaboration, and the human spirit, they could be overcome. The city had changed, and she had changed. Together, they had proven that hope, creativity, and unity could shape a better world. Ethan looked up at her with a smile. "Do you think we'll always be able to help people like this?" he asked. Lila nodded, her eyes reflecting the stars above. "As long as we keep learning, listening, and helping, yes. The work is never finished, but each step forward makes a difference. Together, we can face anything, and the future can be brighter because of it." Ethan grinned, feeling a sense of purpose and belonging that went beyond words. The lost princess had come home, not just to reclaim her place, but to transform it. With the human child by her side, she had shown her people that courage, creativity, and collaboration could overcome fear and doubt. She had demonstrated that humans, with their unique perspective and resilience, could inspire change and growth in ways previously unimagined. The city, once cautious and uncertain, was now a place of hope, learning, and opportunity. As the night deepened and the city slept, Lila and Ethan stood silently, looking at the horizon. They had faced countless challenges, and yet each obstacle had been an opportunity to learn, grow, and prove that unity and understanding could triumph over fear. Their journey had changed not only their lives, but the lives of everyone around them. The lost princess and the human child had returned home, bringing with them a vision for a future where courage, empathy, and creativity would guide their world forward. And in that quiet moment, with the stars above and the city below, they both knew that their story was just the beginning of something far greater. The days following the festival were filled with a quiet excitement that spread through the city. Citizens moved with more purpose. Conversations carried a sense of possibility. And children played openly, exploring ideas and experimenting in ways Leela had only dreamed of when she first returned. The city had become a place where learning, creativity, and courage were valued equally. And Lila walked among her people with a sense of calm pride. Ethan had grown into a young leader in his own right. He no longer needed constant guidance from Lila, though he still looked to her for reassurance in difficult moments. He led workshops for children and young adults, teaching problem-solving, inventive thinking, and collaboration. His methods were simple, yet effective, drawing on the lessons humans had taught him and blending them with the traditions of Lila's people. Citizens began to notice the changes, understanding that even small, thoughtful actions could have a ripple effect across the city. One morning, news arrived that a distant region of the planet was experiencing a shortage of clean water. Leela immediately gathered her council and advisors to plan a response. This was not merely an infrastructure problem. It was a test of the city's new systems, the lessons of cooperation, and the human ingenuity they had embraced. Ethan suggested a mobile water purification system that could be deployed quickly and adapted to local conditions. The council initially hesitated, but Lila's calm authority and past successes persuaded them to act. They mobilized teams, combining human-inspired techniques with local knowledge. The system was efficient, flexible, and surprisingly simple. Yet it solved a problem that had confounded traditional approaches. Citizens watched as teams deployed the equipment, guided by Leela and Ethan, and clean water began reaching communities that had struggled for months. The success inspired confidence and further strengthened the city's trust in the new methods of collaboration. During the work, Leela spent time speaking with citizens, listening to their concerns and learning from their experiences. She understood that leadership was not just about issuing orders. It was about understanding, empathy, and the ability to act on knowledge gained from others. She encouraged humans and her own people to work side by side, exchanging ideas and refining solutions. The city had become a living laboratory for cooperation and growth. Evening fell. Kana and Leela and Ethan walked along the canals, watching the water glimmer in the fading sunlight. Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. "Do you think this city will ever stop growing like this?" he asked. Lila shook her head with a gentle smile. "Growth is never really finished. There will always be new challenges, new ideas, and new lessons. The important thing is that we continue to learn and adapt. That is what makes a city strong and a people strong." Ethan nodded, absorbing the lesson and feeling a sense of purpose that stretched beyond his years. The following weeks brought a flurry of activity. Citizens began experimenting with energy-efficient designs, transportation improvements, and social programs inspired by human ingenuity. Ethan oversaw some of these projects, guiding without imposing, allowing creativity to flourish while providing insight when needed. Lila facilitated, encouraged, and protected the process, ensuring that mistakes were treated as learning opportunities rather than failures. One afternoon, an unexpected message arrived from a distant planet that had heard of Leela and Ethan's successes. They requested guidance in improving their cities and governance, hoping to apply the lessons of cooperation and human-inspired innovation. Lila prepared a delegation, including Ethan and several trusted advisors, to visit the planet. This was an opportunity to expand their influence and show that the principles they had implemented could work beyond their own borders. The journey was long, filled with excitement and anticipation. Ethan took the lead in explaining their strategies, sharing experiences, and demonstrating solutions. The neighboring planet's leaders were cautious at first, but gradually began to trust the methods. Seeing the results firsthand, Leela observed, proud of the young human who had once been a child in need of protection and had grown into a thoughtful, inventive, and courageous figure. During their stay, they faced challenges. Infrastructure issues, resistance to change, and unexpected emergencies tested their patience and ingenuity. Yet, Lila's leadership, combined with Ethan's human-inspired creativity, allowed them to solve problems efficiently. They taught the local citizens to collaborate, to think creatively, and to value different perspectives. By the time they returned home, the neighboring planet had implemented systems that would ensure sustainability, growth, and adaptability. Back in their city, Lila and Ethan found that the work never truly ended. Citizens continued to innovate, experimenting with new technologies, social programs, and educational initiatives. Leela encouraged exploration and creativity, reminding everyone that progress came from learning and adaptation, not fear or rigidity. She and Ethan walked among the people, listening, advising, and sharing insights. One evening, as the city lights reflected in the canal waters, Ethan asked, "Do you think people will ever forget what humans can do?" Lila smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "They will not forget. They have seen the results, the courage, and the creativity humans bring. They understand now that differences can be strengths and that working together can overcome even the hardest challenges." Ethan grinned, feeling a sense of purpose that inspired him to continue teaching and leading. The city thrived in ways that went beyond infrastructure and governance. Social bonds strengthened as people collaborated on projects, shared knowledge, and supported one another. Artisans created works that blended human and local styles. Schools introduced curricula inspired by cross-cultural learning. And children grew up understanding the power of empathy, creativity, and courage. Lila watched with pride, knowing that these lessons would carry forward for generations.